I woke up to a miracle today. Triggers fade as I find my way. No judgment to lead astray. In this peaceful state I'll stay.
Welcome back. It's great to have you with us again for another exploration with A Course in Miracles in Practice.
And today, we're stepping into a part of the workbook that just feels different.
It's getting so much more direct, almost, straightforward.
That's a great way to put it. After all these lessons, hundreds of them, with these dense metaphors and big ideas to wrestle with, suddenly we're here.
And the lessons are just sparse. They're incredibly direct.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking at today with lesson 356.
It feels less like an instruction, doesn't it? And more like an absolute statement of truth. It's delivered without any apology.
Right. It really doesn't give the mind much space to, negotiate or get busy analyzing it.
And that simplicity, that's often where the challenge comes in for us.
It's so interesting, isn't it? When the answer is presented without all the complexity, our minds, which are just so trained for complex problem solving, can feel a little lost.
Yeah, disoriented. You start looking for the hidden assignment.
Exactly. What's the part I'm supposed to figure out?
We've gotten comfortable with the intellectual effort of trying to understand.
And this lesson today just says, here's the truth, now accept it.
So as you listen to our exploration today, we really invite you to just notice what comes up for you, what surfaces in your own mind when the truth is presented this clearly.
Are you looking for the loophole or, the action item? What's the mind trying to do with this?
And if any questions or reflections do come up, we are always so grateful to hear them.
You can always email us. It's ACIM@theworldharmonyproject.org.
Okay, so let's just begin by reading the lesson itself.
Let's do that.
Lesson 356, sickness is but another name for sin. Healing is but another name for God. The miracle is thus a call to him.
Father, you promised. You would never fail to answer any call your son might make to you. It does not matter where he is, what seems to be his problem, nor what he believes he has become. He is your son, and you will answer him. The miracle reflects your love, and thus it answers him. Your name replaces every thought of sin, and who is sinless cannot suffer pain. Your name gives answer to your son, because to call your name is but to call his own.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. The lesson just kicks off with these three really definitive statements.
Yeah, no preamble.
None. Sickness is sin. Healing is God. The miracle is calling on God. There's no ambiguity there.
That's right. The lesson doesn't try to guide you or ease you into these ideas. It defines them. But it defines them according to the reality of the mind, not the illusion we see in the world.
And the absolute nature of those definitions, that's really the bedrock of our whole exploration today.
It is.
So let's start with that very first one. Sickness is but another name for sin. I think we have to immediately establish which level we're talking about here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is the first place the mind can get tripped up.
Because it's not talking about external forms.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's not about our physical symptoms or our bodies or recovering from a cold or an injury. The Course is always working at the level of the mind.
The decision-making point.
Yes, the place where we establish our identity.
Mm-hmm.
And sickness, in this context, is simply defined as placing our identity in separation rather than in God.
It's that voice to see ourselves as fragmented, isolated, and ultimately guilty.
And it's so important to remember that word sin in the Course. We can sometimes forget. It doesn't mean some kind of, moral failure or a bad behavior out in the world.
Right.
It's purely the belief that we have successfully separated from our source. That one belief, that one decision to be separate, that is the original sickness of the mind.
And if the mind makes that choice for separation, it has to create a state of conflict and fragmentation within itself. There's no way around it.
Right, and that internal state of conflict, that's what we then name sickness.
Whether it shows up as anxiety or guilt or depression or conflict in our relationships or even a physical ailment.
Doesn't matter. It all stems from that one same core mental choice.
So if the sickness itself is the belief in separation, then everything that seems to follow from that is just the form the sickness is taking.
Exactly. And the mind tends to get obsessed with the form.
Totally. The headache, the argument with a spouse, the lack of money. We think that if we can just fix the form, we'll cure the sickness.
And the Course constantly, gently reminds us that trying to heal the form is,
Well, it's futile because the sickness isn't in the form. It's in the decision maker. It's in the mind itself.
our external experiences are just a reflection. They're a picture of the mind's internal state, of its belief that it's apart from its source. So this means that when the lesson moves on to define healing, it can't possibly define it as, repairing the body or changing something outside of us,
No, it has to address the root cause.
which is that belief in separation.
And that's why the next definition is so profound. It just says, healing is God.
That's it. Full stop. Healing is the recognition that the separation, that original sin, never actually happened.
It's accepting unity, which just means accepting our true identity.
And when we define healing as God, we move it completely out of the realm of human effort.
It's just a state of being that is either accepted or rejected.
And the acceptance of that state is the healing.
Okay, so that brings us to the third piece, to the miracle. If sickness is separation and healing is unity, what's the action? What moves the mind from one to the other?
And the lesson gives it to us so simply. The miracle is thus a call to Him.
With healing defined as God, the miracle is calling on God. It makes perfect sense.
Because that call is the mind's willingness to turn away from the belief in separation. The miracle isn't some magical result of the healing.
It's the act itself.
It's the act of turning the mind toward the recognition of God's presence.
The miracle is just that little shift in perspective, that one moment of deciding for unity instead of for isolation.
It's the undoing of the belief in separation. The mind is simply deciding against its chosen belief system and turning back toward the source that it never actually left.
And this whole framework, these three simple lines, they just completely undermine the ego's entire philosophy of struggle.
Oh, completely. The ego needs the sickness to be real. And it needs the healing to be difficult, something you earn, something that's conditional. And this lesson just denies all of that right up front.
I think we should focus on that idea of undoing for just a second because it's so important. If separation is just a thought error, a mistaken identity, then calling on God doesn't create some new, better state for us.
No, it just allows the mind to see the truth that was already there all along. The sickness we perceived, it took an enormous amount of mental effort to keep that belief going. The miracle is just the willingness to stop that effort.
To just accept the reality of unity.
What's so fascinating is how the lesson positions the miracle, the call, as the thing that undoes the belief system. It doesn't ask us to analyze the belief system or trace its origins.
Or to justify why we have it.
None of that.
Yeah.
It just asks for a simple redirection of our focus.
And that simplicity is often where the mind starts to push back. It's developed this really complex story around its suffering.
Right.
We cling to this idea that the problem has to be as complex as our perceived solution. And this lesson just says, no, the problem is one and the answer is one, God. Which leads us so beautifully into the prayer section of the lesson, because this is where it defines the unconditional nature of that healing. And this prayer, it's just this incredible declaration of God's absolute commitment. And it speaks directly to our tendency to put conditions on getting help. The prayer comes in and explicitly removes all of those requirements. It starts with that promise. Father, you promised you would never fail to answer any call your son might make to you.
And that promise means the answer isn't dependent on our ability to be perfect.
No.
It's dependent on God's promise to be consistent.
That's a huge relief. Because if the answer depended on us maintaining some perfect state of readiness, we'd always be striving.
And always failing.
Always. The certainty of the answer is established completely outside of our own fluctuating mental states.
And we see that removal of requirements so clearly in the very next lines. It covers the three things we constantly worry about. It does not matter where he is, what seems to be his problem, nor what he believes he has become.
Let's just stay with that for a moment. It does not matter where he is. That's about the state of the mind.
Right. Whether you feel like you're deep in despair or frantic or calm or confused, your mental or physical location has no bearing on the answer.
You don't have to clean up the mental mess before you present it to God.
It just completely invalidates that common spiritual trap of, I'm too messy right now.
We do that all the time. We postpone the call. Once I feel a little less separate, or once I've meditated for long enough, then I'll be ready to call on God.
But the promise says, where you are is fine. The call is answered from right here, right now.
Okay, then the next part. What seems to be his problem? This goes right to the form of the sickness.
Yes, and as we were just saying, the mind is obsessed with making its problem special. But the prayer tells us the form is irrelevant. Whether we see the sickness as just a small, momentary grievance or some monumental life crisis,
The content is always the same.
it's always the same. The belief in separation, and the answer is always the same.
And then the last one, and this can be the most challenging for that separated self, nor what he believes he has become. This one addresses our investment in the story of our guilt, our flawed identity. We believe we've become guilty, unworthy, maybe even unforgivable.
And this is just, it's so generous.
Yeah.
The conditions of the illusion, all the terrible things the ego has convinced us we are, they have no bearing on the answer of reality.
The prayer acknowledges that the son, no matter how lost he seems to be, or how deeply he believes in his own isolation, he's still the son.
And the answer is absolute, because the identity of the son is absolute. He is your son, and you will answer him.
There's no room for doubt, no room for conditions. The answer is just inherent in the relationship itself.
The miracle reflects God's love, which means the answer is always love too. And that love doesn't change based on how deep our illusion is or how complex the story is that we've built around our suffering.
It's just a constant recognition of our reality.
And then it gets really interesting. It starts to talk about the mechanics of the answer.
Right. Your name replaces every thought of sin, and who is sinless cannot suffer pain. That's the whole equation for atonement laid out so simply.
It's a beautiful statement about substitution. God's name is the truth of unity. So the moment the mind chooses unity, that thought automatically cancels out every single thought of sin, which is the thought of separation.
It's not a slow process of purification.
No, it's an immediate replacement, one thought for another.
We have to understand the metaphysical implications of that, of replaces every thought of sin. In our ego thought system, we believe we have to pay for sin or atone for it, or earn forgiveness over a long period of time.
But if sin is just a thought, just a mistake, it doesn't need punishment or labor to be removed.
It just needs correction.
And God's name is the ultimate correction. It's the thought that completely contradicts the thought of separation. Pain is a necessary consequence of the belief in sin. Pain is the proof. It proves we are separate and guilty, and therefore we deserve punishment.
So if the mind accepts its sinlessness, which is just another word for unity, it has nothing left to suffer about.
Suffering loses its function. It was created by the ego as proof of separation, and when separation is denied by calling on God, the proof just becomes meaningless.
The function of pain is to sustain the belief in separation. If that belief is replaced by the name of God, pain has no purpose left. It just dissolves.
A sinless mind cannot logically suffer pain because it knows it's safe in unity.
And then that final line brings the whole point home to our true identity. Your name gives answer to your son, because to call your name is but to call his own.
When we call on God, we are affirming the truth of who we are. The call is a recognition of our own sinlessness. It's an act of self-remembrance.
So the call isn't a plea from some desperate victim to an outside authority. It's an acknowledgement by the Son that his reality is one with the Father. The healing is just an inherent function of remembering who you are.
The profound realization here is that the answer isn't something God gives to us. The answer is who we are.
When we call on the name of God, we're simply using the language of reality. And that's the only language that can communicate our identity.
So the lesson just ends there. The three definitions are set up, the mechanics of the unconditional answer are detailed, and by this point in the workbook, the mind has no more intellectual busy work to do.
And that's often where the real friction begins for us as students, isn't it?
It's so interesting that when a lesson gets this direct, when it stops asking us to work and starts asking us to just let go and accept the answer that's already been given, that's when the mind often rebels.
We've become so invested in the process of learning the course.
Right. And sometimes we can notice this kind of cognitive dissonance. Intellectually, we get it. We grasp that the answer is instant and unconditional.
But emotionally, the mind finds every excuse to delay accepting that answer. It's uncomfortable with the idea that the struggle might actually be over.
That mental resistance, it's the ego's final defense. It's defending against the idea that its entire history of effort and sacrifice has just been rendered unnecessary.
And I think one of the biggest concerns that surfaces for us this late in the workbook is an attachment to the belief that suffering is somehow necessary or functional.
Necessary in the sense that suffering proves something about us. It validates our separate identity. We have woven this whole tapestry of our self-concept out of struggle and endurance. We sometimes feel that if we're not suffering, we're not trying hard enough.
Or we're not serious about our spiritual path.
Right.
The ego loves the story of effort. If sickness is just separation and the answer is instantaneous when we call on it, then the whole epic we wrote about our pain.
The hardship, the effort, the long, arduous journey.
It's just an illusion that we're being encouraged to drop right now, immediately.
And when suffering isn't required anymore, the mind can start to panic. It asks, wait, who am I without my history of pain?
Or who am I if I can't share my struggles with other people?
Some of us have used our pain to establish a connection or to gain sympathy, or simply to feel worthy through our endurance.
Yeah.
It establishes us as a separate person with a unique history.
And we hesitate to trade in that hard-won currency for something as quiet and unconditional as God's peace.
The identification with the narrative is the really sticky point. We don't necessarily want the physical sensation of pain, but we deeply identify with the story of effort and strain that it tells about us.
That narrative says, I am a diligent, struggling student of life who deserves recognition for having survived this separation. Simplicity threatens the ego's claim that it's a separate, struggling individual whose actions matter supremely inside the illusion.
And this reluctance to drop the struggle, it often morphs into the second major point of hesitation we see.
Which is that persistent idea that we have to earn access to God, even after walking through this much of the workbook.
We still carry this notion that there has to be a correct way to ask for help. We feel the need to, get ourselves together first.
We do a mental review of our perceived faults, our failures in practice, and we decide we're just too messy right now for a divine answer.
So instead of calling right now, we wait. And that waiting feels so justified. We tell ourselves we're reflecting or gathering our thoughts or making sure we understand the instructions perfectly.
But the waiting just becomes this highly structured distraction. That attempt to earn worthiness is built on the very belief in separation and sin that the lesson says is replaced by simply calling God's name.
It's a total paradox. We're trying to make ourselves sinless through effort so that we qualify for the answer.
There's also a fear, I think, of the instantaneous nature of the answer. If God answers unconditionally and we are immediately whole, what do we do with the identity we built based on conditional worthiness, based on that slow, laborious process of becoming good enough?
It seems like so many of us realize at some point that we've been getting ready to trust the answer, rather than just trusting it now. The preparation becomes the goal.
And the acceptance of the answer is continually pushed off into the future.
Which leads right to the third point of hesitation.
The comfort of preparation.
Exactly. We've spent so much time studying, reflecting, waiting for things to feel more settled. And this whole process of preparation can become a safe, structured stage where we just pause the actual healing.
The mind has a job to do. It's gathering resources, analyzing the text, discussing the concepts. It feels productive. It feels manageable. And losing that waiting stage when there's nothing left to prepare for can be disorienting.
The moment the lesson says, it is done, just call, the mind loses its beloved scaffolding.
If all the external steps vanish, all that's left is the internal decision to accept total healing right now.
And that requires letting go of the investment in the idea of a delayed conditional healing. And the mind will often default back to finding complex intellectual hurdles to maintain its sense of purpose. We try to turn the simple call into a complicated ritual of intention and focus.
But the prayer is so clear. It doesn't demand clarity or readiness or a better state of mind. It accepts the son as he is.
Believing he's separated.
And answers him right there. That's the nature of unconditional love.
What we're being asked to surrender is the struggle itself. The unconditional nature of the answer requires an unconditional acceptance on our part.
We're asked to trust that the simple mental action of calling is enough, regardless of the apparent chaos of our internal or external situation.
When the workbook gives us a lesson this direct, it's challenging the mind to move from knowing about sinlessness to accepting sinlessness immediately, without precondition.
It moves us from study to surrender.
And the mind, feeling that surrender approaching, it'll start to ask, but wait, what about my unique story? What about my particular struggle? It's trying to make the separation special and therefore exempt from the universal answer.
But the lesson already saw that coming. It says, it does not matter where he is, what seems to be his problem, nor what he believes he has become.
It just cancels out the specialness of the problem and the specialness of the sufferer.
The ultimate relief here comes from realizing the answer is not dependent on our ability to be perfect,
but on God's promise to never fail to answer. That shifts the responsibility for the outcome completely away from the separate self and onto the consistency of love.
So all that effort we were putting into preparing, into earning, into solving the separation can finally stop when we truly accept the generosity of this prayer.
That surrender is the final work of the workbook.
It's so helpful to remember that we encounter these moments of resistance not because we failed to understand the lesson.
No, quite the opposite. It's precisely because the lesson is finally demanding a shift in feeling, a shift away from the seriousness of separation and into the peace of unity.
And the feeling that comes up is often this mental discomfort.
As we wrap up this exploration of Lesson 356, we can really look back at the core idea it presented. It simplified everything down to just 3 essential definitions.
Sickness is the belief in separation. Healing is God. And the miracle is calling on God, which is what undoes that belief in separation.
And we saw how that simplicity, coming so late in the workbook, it surfaces our primary resistance.
The hesitation around living without suffering, the need to feel like we've earned the answer,
And a difficulty of letting go of the structure of preparation.
and that mental hesitation is simply the mind trying to protect its investment. Its investment in the idea that our identity depends on our history of pain or our efforts to achieve worthiness.
It's really the final choice between complexity and simplicity. But the workbook doesn't just leave us hanging in that choice.
No, it doesn't. Lesson 357 follows so naturally from this, and it begins to show us how the answer we've been talking about actually meets us.
Through forgiveness and through relationship, rather than through our own personal effort or more preparation. So thank you for walking through these lessons with us. It's a profound journey into the truth of the mind.
It is. And for today, as you go about your day, maybe you can simply hold this thought. It really encompasses the entire lesson and the unconditional nature of love.
Calling on God is enough because that call is already answered.